All right, we are live. Isaiah, thank you for joining me on the Magic Internet Money podcast.
Oh man, glad to be here, Brad. Glad to be talking with you finally.
So we'll wait a couple of seconds for some people to come in. I'm also streaming this on my YouTube channel, my Facebook. But yeah, so for people who don't know who you are, you're the author of Bitcoin in Black America. You got it on your sweater there, right?
Oh yeah. Bitcoin in Black America got a little bit of merch out as well.
So you've been in the space for quite a while, but then this year when the Black Lives Matter protests started up, people started organically just holding up signs and directing people to like convert their anger at the system where they can't really do much about it to reading about Bitcoin and seeing how they can take control of the system by opting out of this corrupt base money fraudulent system that kind of perpetrates wealth inequality among the Black community, and use Bitcoin as a way to just make their lives better. And it was awesome to see that naturally pick up and to see that your book was released at just the perfect time for kind of like redirecting people in a positive way in the Black community to be able to take control of their finances. So it was awesome to see that you were there, and it was like perfect timing.
Oh yeah. Well, Bitcoin is the best form of peaceful protest, in my opinion, because if you're protesting anything social that's going on, at the end of the day, the real protest is against the Federal Reserve, the central banking system, which supports that system that you're promoting. So if you want to solve a problem, you have to get to the root of it. And I think Bitcoin helped solve that problem. And it was great to see people in the UK and Georgia, Florida, Raleigh, North Carolina, California. I mean, it just kind of caught on, and that's sort of how it works on the internet. If something catches on, people will do it. And just seeing the pictures of Bitcoin in Black America signs at protests was great, so that we can sort of, I understand that the situation with George Floyd was bad and that we need to fix that issue, but got to focus on the core issue here. You have to direct your energy towards the actual enemy, so to say, and I think from there we'll solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, and you've been on a lot of shows lately. You've been going on tons of podcasts, and you were on CNBC recently, weren't you?
Oh yeah, that was fun. Glad to be on a mainstream news network so I can hear exactly how they talk versus how we talk. It is drastically different.
Did you ever think you were going to be on CNBC talking about Bitcoin?
I thought I would be one day. My only reserve was that if I got invited, I might not take it. But I decided to do it simply because I definitely feel like once you hit mainstream media, people believe you now. Even though I've been here 8 years and have some couple books under my belt, people believe you once you're on the news, especially in my family. A lot of people were like, "Oh, so this must be real now." And so they were like, "I guess that Bitcoin thing worked out." So it was a good experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you were like, I guess for people to get a bit of a background on you, if they maybe don't know who you are, you found Bitcoin, was it 2013 or something like that?
2013, and around September, October. Yep.
And what was it about like your Bitcoin story? What was it about you that, your background, your upbringing or whatever that made you instantly kind of like look at this and say like, this is going to be something I'm going to put all my time and energy and start writing all the start guides and trying to like help the Black community with seeing that Bitcoin is going to be something they should pay attention to?
Oh yeah. So a few things. One, growing up Black, I've seen the problems in our community financially, and I've heard what are supposed to be the solutions. Haven't seen it happen yet. So that was always in the back of my mind. Second thing is I've always been defiant. Not really, the best thing for my mom, but she always encouraged me to think outside the box and to challenge anything that didn't make sense. And to me, the financial system did not make sense. The crash of 08, 09 happened when I was in college. And for those people who were broke in their life, usually the brokest time in your life is college. And then you throw the recession on top of that. And to me, I had no choice but to say, hey, something's got to change. So when you take the fact that I've grown up Black, I've seen our financial problems, and that Bitcoin is a solution to the financial problems we currently have, that is sort of what created, Bitcoin Zay and what came about with Bitcoin in Black America first and second edition. So I think, how I grew up had onus on it, but also the actions of others helped with that progression as well.
What was your upbringing? Like, were you, I grew up in poverty. Like I grew up on the East Coast of Canada, and I was like, we were on welfare, and I was living in government housing and stuff like that. Nobody in my family was really successful. I didn't have any financial background or like education about the money system or even trying to own equity or anything like that. It was just, money is just a thing that you buy food with, and we were just
Mhm.
focused on other things. We weren't focused on making money. Did you have kind of like financial educational upbringing at all, or kind of some sort of similar upbringing, or?
Not at all. I had a similar upbringing as you. You know, definitely living below the poverty line a long time. My parents, they worked. You know, my mom and dad were together until I was about 11, and they worked. They did what they did. But for most people, working isn't enough. You have to have more to it. My mom was a teacher. My dad owns his own business, and you know, both of those things are pretty low paying when you're first starting out. And they did their best. They did a great job. But again, the financial side of it, grew up in poverty, saw how it was to live in a food desert, moved around a lot. I think we moved 7 times in 4 years, that one period between 11 and 15. So moved around a lot and wasn't really stable, so to say. So, yes, I had a similar upbringing, grew up in the hood, so to say, with a lot of people that made different decisions, been around that life as well. So, coming from that and then seeing what is possible definitely opened my eyes. And I try to do the same for others who grew up like I did.
That's funny. Same thing happened with me. We moved around probably like 10 times when I was a kid, and I went to like 7 different schools. So I never really had
Yeah.
a like I never really got a chance to have that normal like kid upbringing where you get a group of friends and then you just grow up with them together until
Oh, yeah.
I kind of got into college or like I guess high school.
Hmm.
Um so yeah,
Likewise.
I can relate with you there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of jealous when people are like, "Yeah, I'm going back home to my old neighborhood," and I'm like, "I have about 14 of them, so I don't have a whole neighborhood." Like, I can't really say I grew up here. Grew up here. I mean, it's like half a year or a year, like you know. So I was constantly switching friends, changing friends, but ultimately, I think that actually helped. I'm able to operate in different circles, meet
Mhm.
different people, and in the Bitcoin world, you meet a lot of interesting people. So you're able to joust, so to say, in different circles.
One thing that was cool for me to too was I was able to try on different personalities because I knew I was going to a
Mhm.
new school, and at the other
Yeah.
school, I was like known as like the nerdy magic kid or the nerdy karate guy that would be practicing karate ninja rolls out in front of the school, and people would make fun of you for that. Then I'd go to a new school and I'd be like, not gonna do that this time. I'm gonna try something new this time.
Oh yeah, yeah, I hear that. Well, I will say what kept me stable was playing basketball, and I'm from North Carolina, which is the biggest basketball state in the U.S. So if you play basketball, you were sort of straight anywhere you went. But I'm just like you, new group of teammates, new group of friends. Definitely finding yourself when you're younger.
Awesome. So what was at what age were you when you started to like kind of get a core group of friends that you are still in touch with today?
Definitely college.
Okay.
Just like you, I went to NC State in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I have friends that we were roommates for 3 years, and we're still friends to this day.
Oh, cool.
Simply because, again, that was the first time I had been around a group of people that long to make friends. You know, in high school, I stayed in one place for about 3 years, but you know, high school friends don't really last as much. But college friends definitely stuck, and I'm still, you know, definitely cool with those guys today. Actually, two of my roommates are helping me with a new project now because we're all in the tech world. So definitely college.
Nice. So the friends that you were, um, made your circle with in college, are they in Bitcoin now? Have you been able to convince them to get in?
Oh yeah, definitely. So one friend, Dennis, he's amazing. He's worked with IBM, with Cisco. He has like a bunch of patents. He actually introduced me to Ethereum after I introduced him to Bitcoin because he's more technical. So he was just thinking about smart contracts and like all this stuff. So he's been in the space about as long as I have. My other friend, who does more data and data recovery stuff like that, has been on Bitcoin since 2016. So I've been able to orange pill both of them and then bring them along for that. So definite good group of friends there.
How did they do in the bear market? If they came
Uh,
in 16, they probably rode the wave up in 17 and then 18,
mhm.
19. What did they do? Did they panic sell or did you convince them to hold or what?
I have an inkling that they sold a bit, but they tell me that they held just like I have for all these years. I'm pretty sure they sold it a little bit. I mean, you can't go from $500 Bitcoin to 17, 18,000 without selling a small amount. So I don't blame them there. But at the same time, I'm a long time holder, so they always try to impress me with that. Like, no, 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 I'm holding definitely, because they know I'll be like, why would you sell? You're gonna buy back higher. So yeah, they're mostly holders.
You had a pretty awesome tweet a few months back where you were like kind of like making a statement that like you're pissed off or whatever when someone tells you, "Oh, you got lucky with Bitcoin." Um, I can't remember
Mhm.
exactly the tweet now. You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I've had to combat that a couple times. It's not too bad, but a lot of times people will look at the Bitcoin price and they'll say, "Hey, if I would have bought it at $100, I definitely would have held it till now, and I would have made all this money. You got lucky. Luckily, you heard about it, and most of it is, to me, is more people just don't like the fact that you got in early. Jealous. I don't know what it is, but it definitely was not luck. It took a lot of time, a lot of studying, a lot of 12 hours, 16-hour days. Still doing it now. A lot of staying up at night. A lot of friends that left, family that didn't believe you, family members that are like, "Oh, you must be a drug dealer now, or it must be a multi-level marketing scheme, or it's a Ponzi scheme." Like having to deal with that all of that weight on you, looking at charts at 2 a.m., having to go to work at 7. All these, this is not luck. And then being able to learn a different skill on top of what you already knew. I'm a technical person. I learned the financial market on my own over this 8 year span. I was not a financial or business major. So I had to learn that on my own. And all of that took time, took patience, and holding Bitcoin when you're hungry and homeless. That's not luck either.
Mhm.
That takes,
So
like
what
I
was
said,
that? You said
yeah,
something, I think it was like you were in your car or something like that, and you were holding your
yeah,
Bitcoin. Like what's the story
yeah.
there?
Yeah, so it was 2015, and I had I had gotten out of my apartment and really trying to find myself, figure out whether I wanted to stay in Raleigh or move back to Charlotte, which is my hometown. And during that time period, I had about $6,000 or $7,000 worth of Bitcoin, but I refused to sell because I knew it would be worth more in the future. But I was eating Funyuns and sleeping in my car for 2 weeks while I
No
figured it out
way. Wow. Okay.
literally. And people think it's crazy, but I always try to tell them is like I would rather do that and figure it out myself than to run to the solace of living at my mom's house or somebody's house and trying to whatever, or selling my Bitcoin to pay for something right now, because that same Bitcoin could be potentially what makes my family generationally rich. So it was worth it. And again, it's not luck. It takes a lot. And a lot of things people don't understand is a lot of the OG, 2011, 2012 people, they did the same thing. They were trying to live because Bitcoin was not, the value it is now. But at the same time, we're here today. I've made it, and I like to tell that story really to people that think that it was lucky, you just bought it and just sat on it. It's like, no, not at all. Especially with the media pushback and all that stuff.
Mark Goodwin says my friends went from going, "You got lucky," to, "Oh, I'm so lucky you showed BTC to me."
Oh man, I can't tell you how many people have said, "I'm so glad I know you," because they've never heard about it from anybody else. So especially in the Black community, a lot of people like, you're the single only person I've ever heard it from. So yes, that did change over time.
Yeah, man, what conviction that you must have. I mean, I was kind of in a similar situation, but not to the level where I was like living in my car or anything like that, but I was mentally kind of stressed because
Mhm,
I was lost my income. My whole income just evaporated overnight. I had a business
mhm,
partner that kind of like screwed me and my
mhm,
income went to zero. And the only thing I had left was equity in my house, but I still had my mortgage. So it was like I couldn't really do anything with that or my Bitcoin. And
mhm,
it was probably mid 2016, something like that, when Bitcoin was maybe like 400, 500, maybe something around those level.
mhm. Yep.
And I was literally like, I'm going to sell my house and move in with the in laws before I sell my Bitcoin, because we were kind of like
Yes.
faced with the decision. I had to do something. And I'm like,
Mhm,
this is like, I've been in Bitcoin since 2011 and I held through two of the bubbles
mhm,
already. And we got back into the depths of like the bear market again. And that's when my income went away. And I was like, it doesn't exist. I'm
yeah.
just going to pretend it doesn't exist. And I'm going to do whatever the hell I have to make ends meet. So when you tweeted that, I was like, man, I can relate with that, except not living in the car. Like I probably wasn't in that situation. Did you have like, you have a kid now, right?
Yep. I just had a daughter. She's 3 months old. So started
Congrats.
my own family. Yeah. Thank you, man. It's
You
been
get
a
you
great
getting
experience.
sleep or
Not at all. Not
no?
really. Well, the good thing is I work most of the day anyway, so I'm up. But yeah, not much. But I'll try and get more sleep as she gets a little older.
Yeah, you're thinking about sleep now, eh? You're just like, oh, I want to go lay down.
I know. Exactly.
Well, it's awesome that you're like influencing so many folks in the Black community, and we've been hanging out on Clubhouse a little bit. I've just been kind of like in rooms that you're in, listening to people talk. And there's this group on Clubhouse, Black Bitcoin Billionaires, or is that how it's the club?
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah. So there's so many really cool, influential Black people in Bitcoin I didn't even know. Like
Yes.
in a bubble, I guess, on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was aware of you, and I'm aware of Alu from Lightning Labs. He's like
Mm-hmm.
a
Yep.
Bitcoin
I know.
developer.
Oh yeah, I know roast beef. That's my man.
Roast beef.
Yeah.
Such a smart dude, man. Usually I listen to podcasts on 1.5 times or 2x speed just to get through it. But when he goes on a podcast, I have to slow it down to 0.75x.
Yeah, he's so smart. He thinks faster than he talks.
He's
Talks
so
backwards.
he's such a smart dude.
Yeah.
But can you tell me, like, is Black Bitcoin Billionaires, is that something you helped create, or is that a group that Lamar and those guys made and you kind of joined in on it? What's the story there?
Yes, me and Lamar are the co-founders of Black Bitcoin Billionaires. And on Clubhouse, he was on there first. He pulled me into it. I didn't know what Clubhouse was, but he said this could be a good opportunity because we can speak directly to the people and we can get our message out faster than, YouTube videos or podcasting. And I took him up on his offer, and we've grown today to, I believe, over 15,000 members. And this group, this month for Black History Month, we're actually giving away over $100,000 worth of Bitcoin to families. Our goal is to create Satoshi millionaires, and we want to give them a
Nice.
little bit to start. But we want to encourage every family to own at least 1 million Satoshis, which right now is about $350. So yes, that group is growing. We have different rooms. We have the Crypto Virgins Hour. We have the Genesis Block on Mondays, which is our main show. We have Who Wants to Be a Crypto Millionaire, where you can answer questions and earn crypto. We're coming out with a demo day where actual startups can pitch their company on Clubhouse. We have VCs listen in, so Black-owned businesses can get that VC investment that we only get 1% of right now. So yes, all of this has been done in order to move the Black community into the forefront of the Bitcoin space because, as you just said, when you get in that bubble of Bitcoin, it's mostly middle-aged white dudes telling each other how much they love Bitcoin. It's a big circle jerk, which is fine. I love talking about Bitcoin. I can talk about it all day. The problem is, most of these rooms, most of these groups, I always end up being the one Black person in there. Even at conferences, I'm the one Black person, which is fine because I'm not looking at it from a race standpoint. But I know so many smart people who most likely they're just not in the room because the white people who are friends with other white people, they just don't know them. And that's just how it is. So if I have to introduce them, once people find out who they are, they're like, wow, all of this has been going on and we had no clue. Exactly. No
Man,
clue.
Lamar
Like,
is like, dude, he's awesome. Like I've listened to him speak like a few clubhouse rooms, and he needs to have like 100,000, 200,000 followers on Twitter for sure. He needs to be one of the like bigger voices in Bitcoin because he's a smart dude. He's been around for a long time,
yes,
yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, 2011, he came in. He created the Fever wallet, one of the first Bitcoin wallets. Actually, the only wallet that wasn't taken off iOS when they did a sweep and took off all those wallets. That was the only wallet still on there. He's been in a long time. Sinclair Skinner, he created Bitmare, where you can actually buy Bitcoin and use some of it to fund Zimbabwe farmers. He's been in since 2011. I mean, Naja Roberts, the only Black woman in America with the crypto lounge. I mean, these people are super smart. We have people that work for or used to work for JP Morgan. We have, CJ, who's our in-house lawyer. He's a purely cryptocurrency lawyer, which he's created a lane that most people don't even realize. So yes, I love that our clubhouse is very diverse. We have lawyers, engineers, developers, authors, all of that stuff. And I just think that once people realize that in the Black community, we have the same amount of talent, we're doing the same amount of stuff, then we can get to the mainstream portion of Bitcoin where it's for everybody. But as it currently stands, that divide is still there, but we're breaking down those walls day by day.
Yeah, not only you guys doing this, but there's like such a huge community of Bitcoiners in Nigeria.
Yes,
like the guys that are building the Bitcoin exchanges and the wallets in Nigeria. I was shocked when I went on Clubhouse and I was listening to like I think his name is Bernard Farrow, from BitNob, talking about how people are using Bitcoin in Nigeria. And then I went on Google search trends and I compared USA to Nigeria for searching Bitcoin and buy Bitcoin. The USA chart is like boom, 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 2017 FOMO, and then it just drops off a cliff in 2018 and starts to slowly grow, and now it's starting to come back up. But when you go to Nigeria, it's like a steady, like peaks and valleys, like no valleys, just like a steady rise of interest in Nigeria. And that, I guess, goes to show that because they have such a like a crappy currency there, the naira is like super manipulated and hyperinflationary, and the government there censors transactions, and 200 million people live in Nigeria, and it's one of the fastest growing tech communities in the world. And some people are projecting that Lagos and these different cities in Nigeria are going to be like the #1 tech cities in like the next 50 years.
Yes.
So it's amazing to see that like these guys are building Bitcoin related businesses, and not only that are they doing that, and it's exciting to see that globally happening, but they're not focused on altcoins and creating their own coins and stuff like that. Their mission is like, let's get Bitcoin to mass adoption in Nigeria. So that's awesome to see that stuff happening.
Oh yeah, amazing. Yeah, and I think that a lot of people, once they realize this, Nigeria has almost as many people as America. There's on average 2 to 3 cell phones per person, so they have the technology to use it. And then from a development standpoint, a lot of Nigerian developers are just as good as any developers around the world. So they have all the stuff to have a huge tech city in Lagos, Accra, Ghana, South Africa, Johannesburg. You have a lot of places where this is actually happening. It's just going under the radar because in America we think it's the U.S. We got to have the best. No, I've met a lot of people in a lot of countries that will eat a lot of Americans' lunch. They just don't have the type of platform they do that we do.
Yeah, there's also this dude Tim Akimbo. Have you ever met him before or talked to him?
I have not, but I wrote about him as far as starting a Lightning node, and the first Lightning node in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah, I've been following him for a few years, and he's a smart dude. And he got accepted to the Chain Code Labs residency program to like become a Bitcoin developer.
Nice.
So then COVID hit, and he wasn't able to like get to America to get to the program, but he's accepted, and he's going to be kind of one of the next technical leaders, I think. And smart dude, and just love to see all the activity happening in Nigeria and in Africa. So one of the things that like I think we can, be good to talk about this, because in the early days of Bitcoin, it was a lot of anarchists and libertarians, and just that seemed to be the group of people that came in. But I don't seem to like recall a lot of black people that came in the early days, other than guys like Lamar, which I didn't really know about, but I kind of saw him here or there. But why do you think it is that the early days of Bitcoin, it was a lot of those like white guys, libertarian guys? Because I mean, like someone like me, I didn't have much money. It wasn't like it was a money thing for me. It was just I was pissed off at central banks, and I was watching Occupy Wall Street happen, and I was thinking these dollars are going to go to shit, so I want to get some gold. And then I found actually Da Vinci Jeremy, who's a black guy from Canada. He's the dude that I heard about Bitcoin from. So I saw his videos talking about gold, and then he's like, oh, and also there's these digital gold things called Bitcoins. So he's the dude that kind of introduced me to Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, Da Vinci's great. I actually got to do a thing with him in Chicago not too long ago. Da Vinci's great, but yeah, I mean, in the Black community, one thing I will say that is historically speaking in America, the thing that a lot of older Black people believe is that because the government gave us jobs or they did the Civil Rights Act, that we should listen to what our government is saying, while simultaneously Black people also say that they don't trust the government or people in power. So it's sort of a love-hate relationship. I call it Stockholm syndrome.
Isaiah, hold on a second. My daughter's in here grabbing. What are you looking for? What? My phone? I gave it. She's over there. Say hi, because now you're interrupting the stream. You gotta say
hi. Oh yeah. Hey, how you doing?
Okay, get out of here. I'm doing a live stream.
That's beautiful.
Hold on, I'm gonna close the door.
Wow, it's all good.
I forgot to tell them that we were going live. All right. Can you back up a few seconds there for me?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So to answer the question, as far as how Black people are viewed with the libertarian anarchist movement, for one, a lot of Black people receive stuff from the government, so that's who they rely on. The Civil Rights Act, government subsidies, things of that nature, thinking that they should accept it while simultaneously saying they don't like the politicians in power, they don't like the government. So I think it's Stockholm syndrome. And that was what we saw early on. There were not a lot of Black people in the tech space who thought to themselves, hey, I want to be liberated from the system. Most Black people were trying to join the system. Like we've been fighting so hard to just get to a point where it's like, all right, well, we're
Gotcha.
a part of it. So then now that we got a part of it, a lot of Black people are like, well, it feels good to be a part of it, at least to an extent. You know, it's still stuff going on, but it's like we're starting to get closer. So when you say to somebody like that, hey, all this system is corrupt, we should be trying to get rid of it as a libertarian. The first thing they're going to say is, hold up, go against the government again? We've been shot at for that. We've had dogs on us for that. We've been killed for that. I have a job, a car, a family, not going that route. So you have the ability to think that way, usually because historically there has not been really many social things that would make a white man say to themselves, when I go outside, I'm in danger. So the Black people, they were just like, no, they would shun it. Even if I would tell them this is actually the liberation you're looking for, not trying to join in and do everything everybody else does. So you didn't see a lot of Black people early on. The best part about that was the Black people who were in there, they were true anarchists. They were libertarians. They were quiet. They were almost basically anonymous. So they were just like everybody else. That's why you didn't hear about them. So you have both of those factors into it. But again, now that we're at a place where it's more mainstream, I'm starting to see people coming out of the woodworks that are like, yeah, I've been around since 2011. I just didn't know anybody else. I've been around since 2012. I just didn't know who to talk to. And if you're on a Bitcoin talk forum and everybody's, basically, random or anonymous, you wouldn't find them there. So those days were great. I think those people, help start the movement, and they will continue to push it. It'll just be less mainstream.
Right. Okay. So I get what you're saying there. You're saying, like, for instance, for me, like I grew up in poverty as well, but
Mm-hmm.
when I got out of that with entrepreneurial sort of adventures that I tried, I was doing game company. I did a game company. I started making some money with that,
Mm-hmm.
and I started to think, okay, well, this is a big scam. I got to get out of this money system. Then even though I grew up with like a poverty mindset, I wasn't facing systemic racism or something like that. That would also give me another barrier to thinking that, well, this is just the way it is, and I shouldn't try to exit this system because now I finally got some money. I don't want to
Yes.
fight against the money. I gotta just get the money.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you're saying that, like, Black people that escape that system of poverty, they also have another barrier to escape, which is like racism.
Yes. Yeah, and it's not that it would hold anybody back from achievement. It's that it would take away their mental mindset to say we can free ourselves, which is a lot of the pushback I got from a lot of Black people early on was when I was saying, well, this is true freedom. When you own your money, they're
Right.
like, no, I don't even want that. Like it's Stockholm syndrome. It's like you're showing them you can leave the plantation and they're like, I don't want to go. This is comfortable. Which again, I can't really blame a lot of older Black people for thinking that way because they grew up where they couldn't even go to the same schools as some people, couldn't drink out the same water fountains, couldn't work certain jobs, couldn't go to certain colleges. And they're like, finally, I just can go and do, what everybody else does. I'm not trying to leave that to try and be radical now because being radical as a
Yeah.
Black person, you get shot first. We know that. If I live in an open carry state, I've seen 0 white men with open carry get shot. I've seen at least about a half dozen Black people get shot for open carry. So even if we're like libertarian, have your guns, have your money, we know as Black people at the front, even I know right now at the front of the Bitcoin movement, maybe a target because if the Black side of it comes about as far as people and we get the knowledge and we can achieve, that's always been a threat to the status quo.
Right.
Unfortunately, I still think that most of the Black community has to wake up to realize that the current system we're in is not going to benefit you. We should be the first to leave. So we should have been the first libertarians. Problem is, like you said, historically, people were just happy to have a little bit of something. So they were just like, I got something, I want to hold on to it. But I think that's changing now. A lot of barriers are being broken down, and now that the emperor is showing they have no clothes, I think we can take advantage.
Well, and it's also kind of it's sucks because the Federal Reserve is actually the biggest problem when it comes to wealth inequality in America, and the
Yes.
Federal Reserve's policies are racist, like by default. The
Mm-hmm.
printing money is a racist thing when you live in a system with wealth inequality that disproportionately affects Black people. Printing
Mm-hmm.
money that goes towards the people at the top when disproportionately the people at the top are white, it exacerbates the wealth gap. So even if systemic racism wasn't a thing, and we were able to break all that down, and then people were just looked at truly like in a libertarian way, that like race doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
If we live in a system where the last 100 years benefited white people more than black people, and they still print money that increases the increases the wealth gap, it would still kind of be purveying this baseline um, tendency to like make the wealth go to the top, which is still unfair. And people don't realize, for the most part, that printing money is racist, and it goes disproportionately affects black people worse, because as they print money, it makes the dollars in your bank account worth less. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, people in general have no money, pretty much, like black or white or whatever. People are in poverty and super heavy in debt, but there is an element of money printing actually is kind of like making the problem worse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the old saying goes, if America has a cold, the black community has a flu, because disproportionately, if the money is going to the system, like you just said, and if inflation affects us all, which it does, if you're already at the lower as far as financial, then it affects you even more. So even the little money you are making is being constantly devalued day over day. So that's why I say the Federal Reserve is who we should be aiming at, or the money system as a whole. For Black people, I don't think the social marching, some of the groups that's going on to try and get people in the streets, I don't think that's actually going to work. We've done it. We've been doing it for a few decades now, and where has it gotten us from a financial standpoint? I think we should focus on the actual root of the problem. It is central banking. It is the Federal Reserve. It is our money system. And once you focus on that, everything else opens up from there. Because again, in a fair money system where money can't just be printed, you don't have banks running the country who can lobby to politicians who can then make the laws that oppress you. So if you think of it from the top down, I'll say it again. If the Federal Reserve is still on top and they can still give money to banks who fund politicians, who create laws that oppress you, you are funding the same system that is oppressing you. And you're just going to keep doing it if you stay in the fiat system. In Bitcoin, it is different. You literally get paid as you do more work. It's called proof of work for a reason. And you actually get the value that you deserve because of a money system growing as a group. So that's why I say we should attack the actual problem. And most of the other stuff, I think, is sort of distractions. I commend people who want to march in the streets, but you have a higher chance of getting in jail, higher chance of dying, and yelling at somebody is not going to get them to change it. Bankrupting somebody will. GameStop proved that. If you bankrupt,
Diamond hands.
Yeah. GameStop proved that. You bankrupt a hedge fund, and all of a sudden they're crying like little girls on TV for more regulation. That's how you start to see, like, hey, if you actually want to change something, it's only two ways: it's money and violence. And I don't see a lot of Black people going out to try and do something violent. So it has to be the money. You don't even have to leave your couch to do it. You can protest from your home right now. Mm-hmm. Simple protest is buying Bitcoin. Every time you move money from the current system to the Bitcoin system, away from what is oppressing you, that is a actual protest. And you can do it every day. Dollar cost average. You can do it every week, and dollar cost average. And you don't even have to leave the couch. So even if you're lazy and don't really want to do it, you can be an armchair activist with Bitcoin.
Well said. Yeah, that's good, man. And a lot of people will kind of like react. We should give the steelman argument, right? That a lot of people, when they hear that the system disproportionately affects Black people, will think, well, I'm poor, and I'm not racist, and I'm poor, so it actually affects me too. So the argument there, it's kind of like the boomer argument, right? In a way where we always blame the boomers for creating this Ponzi scheme of the pension system that's going to help them. And then actually when millennials and Gen Zs come around to needing the pensions, it's going to be bankrupt. So there's going to be nothing there. So everybody blames the boomers for creating these like explosive growth in real estate and stocks and benefiting from all the asset inflation in the 70s and 80s. And then the boomers making the policies to keep the interest rates low has actually made it so that our generation has not had that same opportunity to just save money and see it accrue. They've actually printed money and made our dollars worth less. So it's easy to get mad at the boomers, but when you actually break it down, it's like 1% or the 0.1% of that boomer generation are the culprits, and most boomers are poor, and they're also being negatively affected by this too. So it's like, if a white person hears that like the policies have disproportionately affected black people, they will say, well, it's also disproportionately affected me because I'm poor. But black people have had this other secondary thing to deal with of like a whole history of financial oppression. And like you said, if you're successful, and if you guys at the Black Billionaires Club get the Bitcoin Black Billionaires Club get this whole new generation of financial literacy out to the black community, and they start stacking Bitcoin, and they become like, the next part of the 1% of the Bitcoiners that are gonna be able to make policies, then maybe you guys probably feel that there could be some like deep-seated like distrust or like conflict there of like other like white people and other people saying, oh, well, now there's a bunch of black people getting rich. So is that something that you guys, because you kind of hinted at that, is that something that you guys kind of think about or worry about as a black man?
No, I don't really worry about it from the aspect of people just saying it. I worry about actions. So if somebody is taking the action to stop it, I'll worry about it. But if somebody's just saying it or thinking that it's something wrong, I got news for you. Black people are not out for revenge. If we were, it would have been taken out a long time ago. I don't see that happening. So any people that's scared, like, oh, black people gonna get money and then do something to us, no, we're actually way too nice of a people for that. And any other group of people that were slaughtered and killed throughout years through slavery may have had a different reaction. In Haiti, they definitely had a different reaction. So again, we're actually a very nice group of people who just want to make our own way. And I think the best way to do that is to leave us alone to our own vices, and Bitcoin does that. So for any white person who thinks that that is the scenario or that you're not as affected, not saying that. Everybody's affected by inflation. The difference is I'm speaking to my community, and that's it. There's no other. There's no anti anything. I'm just pro-black because that's my family and that's my friends and the community that I want to see build. Everybody else in their own communities do the same. If it's not your race, if it's your religion, if it's not that, if it's your gender, whatever way that you can try and form a group to get into Bitcoin. In order for it to be mainstream, everybody has to join in. So all these groups are needed.
So there's like a subtle form of racism that kind of is baseline appears in places, right? It's not like an active racism. It's just a subtle sort of like remnant of like the past that still kind of permeates through the police system, the judicial system, the financial system, but it's not like people are being openly racist and stuff like that. So a lot of people think racism is kind of a done deal. It's gone. But do you think like this is the way, because I think about this a lot, like I'm like thinking that, I grew up loving like Will Smith and folks like that, a lot of black celebrities that I was influenced by. And, I listened to Tupac. My brother was a huge Tupac fan. So I was always hearing Tupac in the background. Like so I was thinking like my generation grew up not being aware that racism was a thing, like, white poor kids in Eastern Canada. I don't know what it was like for American kids or for black kids who were growing up in that same time. But to me, it feels like we've definitely moved towards a world where there can be a thing where racism is just in the past. But do you think that where do you think that we are on that scale?
Yeah, so I think racism could be a thing of the past, but it keeps getting perpetuated by the media and by other people that it's still this huge problem. And I think that it is
Yeah.
it's a part of our system, but socially, that's not the case. Like I'm not able to go into a restaurant or not able to do stuff. But as somebody who is a business owner, I have been shut out of places where I can own things. That's the biggest thing I'm saying now as far as how racist stuff. When black people try to own things, that's when you're messing up people's money, that's when they all of a sudden are like, hold up, no, we can't keep them in it. And even if they're not trying to be racist, if banks do things such as, hey, if you live in a certain area code, you're most likely not going to pay back a loan, so we're going to give you a higher rate. That zip code was created by the banks themselves when they redline us in a certain area. So if I'm black and happen to live in a black area, all of a sudden, even if my credit score is the same, banks have had to pay out billions of dollars of settlements because they've done this exact practice. So like you just said, even if you're not trying to be racist, it's built into the system so that inherently the numbers come out, black people still don't get as many loans or they get higher interest rates, even with the same qualifications. So even if you're not trying to do it, it's still built into the system. So I think socially we have moved the needle. I think that people are more out and open and have friends and things in other places, which is great. The problem is that historically speaking, ownership has been the issue. As soon as Black people try to own things in the music industry, you can be a rapper all you want, but if you want to own your masters, a lot of people show up dead. Same thing with land. You can work on the farmland, but as soon as you're a Black farmer, we used to own 15% of farmland. Now we own 2 or less than that. So every time we go into ownership, that's when the issues start coming to a head. And that's the issue I have with the current financial system. You can be stopped if you're Black. Can't do that in Bitcoin. If we create something and we want it to run, as long as 2 people are alive, we can keep going.
Yeah, you guys will be the new banks, eh? When the Black Billionaires Club, if you get enough people into Bitcoin, you guys can start your own Bitcoin bank, and then forget
Hey,
the old system.
I was gonna say that's the second person that's told me that this week. I might be a good good honest.
You know, we got to get Kevin Hart involved in this. Have you heard Kevin Hart on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about financial literacy for the Black community before?
I have not. No.
You'll have to go on YouTube and look for it later. But he partnered with JP Morgan. Like, what the hell? I was like, oh, facepalm myself.
That's a money play. He got paid. They gave him a $10 million check, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll go promote JP Morgan."
I'm like, he's gotta get into Bitcoin. He's gotta like learn about Bitcoin and show people how they can get their own financial sovereignty with Bitcoin and actually have ownership of their own finances and their own future.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Whether you're Black or white or poor or rich, I mean, that's a message that resonates with everybody. But it sounds like even more for the Black community, who's traditionally kind of had been, had these prejudice policies or whatever for higher loan percentages and stuff, like you said.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And even Bitcoin, you're right.
Well, I was gonna say, even ownership. People think that when they look at Bitcoin, they're like, "What's the value proposition?" And people have these long spiels. But for the Black community, ownership, unconfiscatable money, is literally the only thing it needed to be for it to be successful, because we've never in U.S. history had money or value or property that couldn't be taken away. Eminent domain, taxes, inflation, by strong arm. The Black Wall Street get burned to the ground with airplanes and bombs. That's happened to us over so many years. We've never seen this before. So if that's the only value proposition, that should be enough for Black people to get into it. That is unconfiscatable. You can't take away my private keys. I can remember it in my head. I can store it somewhere else. It's our wealth. So for the first time, you can actually own it. And I think that's a great value proposition. And hopefully Kevin Hart, some of these other celebrities, DJ Khaled, Floyd Mayweather, Jamie Foxx, they all got hit with the SEC suits because of ICOs. So even if they do come into the crypto market, they're going into ICOs. I'm like, please stop, like, please. So I've been in a couple rooms with like Meek Mill, Soulja Boy, Little Yachty, hopefully soon. So I'm trying to get them the correct message about Bitcoin so that they can use their influence in the correct way, and they won't go running for shiny things like most people. When they get into the market, they're like, oh my God, what's that? Oh, what's that coin? This coin says it's going to change the world. This is Web 5.0. Whatever the hell that shit means. Everybody thinks they have the greatest new Bitcoin. But I want to teach them the real about how most coins are speculative, and Bitcoin is the future global reserve.
I want to get your take on this, Isaiah, because we were in this room together the other day, but I wasn't on stage. You were on stage, and it was Soulja Boy just randomly dropped in on Clubhouse, and so one of the Bitcoiners kind of got him to start talking about cryptocurrency, and then it just sort of randomly turned into a Bitcoin room teaching Soulja Boy about Bitcoin. And I mean, there was some controversy afterwards because you were the only Black guy on stage, and there was like 20 or 30 people up there, and there was a ton of people in the Black Bitcoin community that were like raising their hands trying to get up. And, I was trying to raise my hand and get up too. And I was mad. I was like, why isn't this guy let me up? I want to say something, because I wanted to caution him against like doing ICO stuff. I wanted to bring up the Floyd Mayweather thing and be like, dude, don't get yourself in trouble with this. But the dude that was moderating it just wasn't bringing anybody else up. He was just, I guess, bringing up people he recognized or something like that.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you only got to say one little thing. You got to say, so finally, Jeet, who's an Indian guy, an Indian Bitcoiner, was like, I got to plug Zay's book because it's awesome. It's great for the Black Bitcoin community, Bitcoin in Black America. You should check it out. And then you got to give a little speech to Soulja Boy about it. But then it was like the conversation was mostly dominated by like all these white guys and a couple of women, but there was no representatives of the Black community that came up on the stage. And then afterwards, Bitcoin Chris, I think his name is Chris, he was so pissed off. He started another room about it, and we ended up being like 200 people in the room. Took
Hmm.
for like an hour and a half. We were discussing it, and we were like, "This is, this is the problem with, with baseline sort of like racism that we're not even aware of. That
Hmm.
that room should have been filled with like black Bitcoiners to be able to
Yeah.
help Soldier Boy relate with the community, because as white guys, like, we really don't relate with the way he was brought up and his
Hmm.
struggles. So it was an awesome conversation to have about in the future, when there's somebody from the black community that's looking to get into Bitcoin. As early Bitcoiners, it's our responsibility to elevate the voices of black Bitcoiners, whether,
Hmm.
because that's just the way it should be. And so you weren't in the room, but we had this epic conversation about it. And
I heard about
did
it.
okay.
Yeah, well, Chris actually contacted me during the live stream with Soldier Boy, and one thing I want to say is that I've known about Soldier Boy since he was doing dances in the parking lot with the rubber band chain on, with the Chrysler 300, with his manager Mike. And most of the people who were on that stage, they don't remember that Soldier Boy. I do. I remember him from way back then. The way he grew up, I saw him when he was a 16-year-old kid performing in front of high school students. I saw him when he had "I Got Bathing Apes." I can actually recite the lyrics to half of his first album. Like, I actually know Soldier Boy, so it was interesting that I was the only black person. But I told you, Brad, I'm usually the only black person in these Bitcoin spaces. For some reason, it's like if they know you and they get to know you, of course they will bring you on. But I've been out and about so much, I think that's why they brought me on. But I think he should have been in the Black Bitcoin Billionaires room. Could have got the exact same information, except it would have came from a community that saw him grow from where he was, and we could have warned him of the same things. Not a knock against anybody that was on stage. I'm glad they orange pilled Soldier Boy. It was like the Bitcoin cyber hornets, as Michael Saylor says. We just flooded the room, and it was like no room for altcoin or ICO or shitcoin talk. It was like Bitcoin. This is what you need to focus on. And I think we whittled them down to Bitcoin versus Dogecoin. So at least we got them down to two. But I would love, like I said, I have a signed copy for him. I'll give it to him hopefully soon. But Soldier Boy, Meek Mill, some of the other people, when the rooms start, it's mostly white guys. And what that is, which a lot of white people don't understand, is in the black community, if you quote unquote make it, usually the lawyer is white or Jewish, the financial manager, white, Jewish, the manager itself, white or Jewish. That just happens in the black community. It's like, well, I'm rich now, not really any black people around me, so I'm going to listen to these white guys who are already rich. And that's the same mindset they're bringing into Bitcoin. The problem is, in Bitcoin, we don't care how much money you have. We call Mark Cuban poor. We tell Mark Cuban have fun saying poor. We don't care about your money at all. So, because we're building a new money system. So, what are your dollars worth anyway? So, in the new system, you need to listen to as good information. Of course, white, black doesn't matter, but it is just kind of look bad. The fact that they were, I think a lot of people were just kind of standing him from just like the one or two songs they knew. And then they were trying to give him good information, which is fine. But I wish I could have said more. Hopefully, I'll get more time with a lot of the black celebrities, but it's all good. Again, I say to myself all the time, I've done the work. They will come to me. And honestly, if somebody it says they researched and tried to find black people in the Bitcoin space, and they don't find me or some of the other people, I know they're lying because my SEO from my from my developer, we check it all the time. It's like if you type in Bitcoin in black, my name is 8 of the first 10 things. So I know you didn't look for black people. You were just looking for Bitcoiners, and I can understand, the Mike Novagrasses, the Winklevosses, they're billionaires. That's what you want to listen to. But again, it did just kind of look bad, and I hope in the future we can get more of the celebrities and the black Bitcoin billionaires because we are
How
just as legit and just as valid.
how are you thinking about it when you were on stage with Soldier Boy and it was like, an hour going by and no one's called on you to talk? Were you feeling kind of like upset, or were you kind of looking at it like at least he's getting good information about Bitcoin? What was going through your mind? Like, were you okay with it, or were you kind of mad, or what was the situation when you're on stage with him and not able to say anything?
Well, I won't say I was mad. I would say I was a bit perturbed, only because I was so obviously the only black person on stage.
Yeah.
So you would think I would at least field one or two questions, you know what I mean? But I wasn't mad because he was getting good information for one. And for two, I've always been the type of person that I don't force things. If me and him are supposed to meet together and talk about it, we will. And in my life, a lot of times over the years, the last 8 years, people have been like, why don't you speak up, or why don't you do more in certain areas? And I'll just sit back and wait. That same person comes to me in the future. So again, I don't really press issues. I think what's supposed to be mine is mine, and I think I will have that opportunity one on one, which is actually better than in that clubhouse room. So I think it'll work out.
That's a good way to look at it, right? Like you're building up your brand and you're building yourself up as a leader, not
Mhm.
just in the Black community, but just in Bitcoin in general. You're building yourself up as a leader. So people are going to want to consult with you, and most likely it's going to pay off for you, I think, pretty big once Bitcoin starts to go even more mainstream. We've got another billion or 2 billion users in, and
Mhm.
like you're the guy, So
Yeah.
I think you're going to be pretty influential, and even more so in the future, especially if you guys keep doing this. So it's pretty awesome that we have you in Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it, and I look forward to keeping it going because again, this is a lifestyle for me. I didn't jump in and jump out. You know, a lot of
Yeah.
YouTubers from 2017, 2018 just flooded away, and a lot of people who might have made some money last year, they're gone too now already. So I've been here, I've seen it, and I want to keep it going because I know in our community, consistency is key. Got to keep it consistent. It can't just come in and come back out.
Yeah. And one of the things that I was kind of like thinking about a couple of times, I've thought about this. It was the Tulsa massacre,
Yes.
where like Bitcoin, like there was this thing called Black Wall Street in Tulsa, and
Hmm.
the Black community used capitalism and created this super wealthy community, and
Hmm.
then the white supremacists just kind of like killed like 6,000 people and totally destroyed that generation of wealth. And
Hmm.
there's still one surviving person who's like a witness, I guess, or survivor from the Tulsa massacre.
Hmm.
And it's just people should go learn about that. I think people
Oh
just
yeah.
should Google that Tulsa massacre, watch a video or two
Hmm.
on it. Like you
Yep.
said, it's Black History Month, and people need to recognize that there was some really insane shit that happened.
Yeah,
And
and let me dive just a little bit deeper into it because I want people to understand what you're saying. The Tulsa Black Wall Street Greenwood community, that was 1921. That was 100 years ago. This is actually the 100-year anniversary of Juneteenth, of all that stuff, or of Black Wall Street. So yes, that was recent. There are people still alive that saw it. Now, one thing about what they did, they had librarians, they had banks, they had planes, they had people that lived there. They had group economics. That's what I want people to understand is that group economics, that money circulated in that group dozens of times before it left and went to another community. That means that the business owner could make money and then send his kids to college to become the lawyers, the doctors, and then it would it would reinvest into the community. We've seen that in Chinatown. We've seen that in Koreatown. We've seen that in Little Ethiopia out in LA. You see that everywhere, or in New York. So group economics works. The only problem they had was that they were brick and mortar stores. So they could be burned to the ground by white supremacists. They dropped bombs, killed people. This was not some, mad group of like 8 dudes. It was a concerted effort. Police, government officials, and actual white supremacists colluded to burn them down. But you can't burn down Bitcoin. So in the future, that won't happen anymore. We can build the same infrastructure from anywhere in the world using Bitcoin as that base. And because you can't burn it down, we won't have a repeat of that massacre.
yeah, unless you gotta put your seed phrase on steel plates.
That too. Yeah.
Steelplate.com. That's what I tell people to go to. Etch your seed phrase into a steel plate. That way, if your house burns down or
Mhm.
whatever, flood or whatever, you don't lose your seed phrase. What are some common things that you hear in like? I guess we'll just before we end this give some advice, and I'd like to know what are you hearing most commonly from people in the Bitcoin Black billionaires rooms that you guys run. What are some common misconceptions that maybe you can kind of address right now to anybody that's watching that is still sort of like you'd figure it's 2021, you'd figure people would be not thinking this stuff anymore.
You think, but we're still very early because we still get, can you buy a fraction of a Bitcoin? Yes, you can. Is Bitcoin and other altcoins equal? No, they are not. We still get, what is scarcity? Because some people don't understand supply and demand. So we have to explain there's a limited supply of Bitcoin versus other coins that can just basically print as much as they want. We also get questions a lot of times from people, how does my business accept Bitcoin? And we give them third party sites, but actually we try and tell them, hey, you just need a QR code. And they're like, so nothing else? And I'm like, well, you can have other stuff, but it's that easy. You just need a QR code and you can start accepting Bitcoin today. So we help businesses in that way. Taxes is a big question because we're entering tax season. So like I said before, CJ, our in-house cryptocurrency tax professional, He answers a lot of those questions because people want to know about capital gains. People want to learn about how can they, basically hold Bitcoin and avoid taxes long term. So all of those things, those are some of the most common questions we get. And I think one of the questions that has started appearing, but it's just not popping up as much because we are mostly Bitcoin, is DeFi. People ask us about DeFi. Is it something I should look into? Is it the future? And I try and explain it this way, that Bitcoin is the purest form of DeFi. It is decentralized finance. So the products that come out of Bitcoin will be the products you see maybe on Ethereum, except with less gas fees and without, sort of the implications that it might be a security later. So Bitcoin is DeFi. And if you want to explore other DeFi projects, fine. However, we mostly try and explain to them that it's mostly speculative and you got to do your research on it.
So there's one thing too, man, that like I've been trying to work on this. I had this like thesis that in the next couple of years, there's going to be quite a few people coming into Bitcoin. We've entered the next phase of mass adoption, and there's going to be 1 billion or so people coming in the next few years. And right now, like we said earlier, most of the people that are found easily on Twitter are like mostly white guys, and they mostly are kind of like the outspoken privacy maximalists, the free speech maximalists, the libertarians, the anarchists, stuff like that, who accumulated a large following from the early days. And I feel like there's a problem in that the next billion people are not going to look like me. They're more going to look like you, or maybe they're Indians or Chinese people or something like that, because that's, there's only a certain amount of white people in the world
Yeah.
and Bitcoin's for everybody.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that maybe the next, if you're a young black man or a young black woman or a young Indian woman or a Chinese guy and you're coming into Bitcoin, do you think that you like people would want to follow somebody who's more like them, or do you think they're okay with like reading books by Safety Moose or Andreas Antonopoulos or something like that? My thesis is that like the retention rate of Bitcoin would be better, and it would be better if we could like help guide people down the rabbit hole of what is Bitcoin by elevating diverse voices and directing people towards someone who's more like them and thinks more like them and has the same life experiences as them, rather than like the existing thought leaders who are not going to be like you. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and like you just said, a diverse group of voices actually helps because not just, let's say, for example, my voice in the Black community or Jeet in the Indian community, but then you need older voices like my guy from Bit Block Boom. His name is leaving me right now, but Gary Leland. He's actually educating the older crowd. I can't do that. I can't talk about boomers that, hey, these are the issues you have. So we need that voice. There's women, Catherine Coley, Catherine Wood. I mean, there's women, Dr. Tanya Evans, black women who teaches blockchain law at University of New Hampshire, or used to. She actually moved on to Dickinson Law. I'm sorry. So those voices need to be amplified, and I think more people will find those voices than the older voices, only because, and I say this with all due respect, for most people, it's boring. And I know, as somebody who loves to read, it sucks to say, but most people do not want to read those books. Most people do not want to engage in a very sophisticated conversation about Bitcoin like we love to do, simply because, just like the internet, we're not explaining layer 2 protocols to people anymore. We're not talking about wide area networks. We're not saying intranet versus internet. All people are asking now is, what's your Wi-Fi? And that's it. So, or what website should I use? So when we get to the point where mainstream is flooding the market, they're going to just want the information that benefits them. And if that information comes from an older person, from a black person, from Indian, Chinese, that's where they're going to go because representation matters. And I believe that most people's voice who are good will override whatever that group is, but that's where people start. And I think that that diverse group of faces can only help Bitcoin. Again, if we're going to be mainstream, you need everybody. My friends in Brazil, that are working on cryptocurrency right now, I can't speak Spanish. How will I communicate with them if they don't do it? So we need these voices definitely all around the world.
It's true what you said, man. Like you could audibly hear Soldier Boy was just wanting to fall asleep in that room at certain
Oh
points.
my
Like
God! Don't
when
even
we were
remind
talking,
me.
we were talking to him about bonds and all these weird
Yeah,
things, and he's just like, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's
yeah,
he's just trying to be polite,
yeah.
but he was
He's
ready
trying
to
to be
fall
polite.
asleep."
Yeah, and I don't think people in our Bitcoin bubble understand that because I've removed myself from that bubble. From the outside looking in, I watch people who I respect, and I'm like, I can't stay awake during your videos, or I can't. get through it, looking at it as somebody who's new. Now, me personally, I love certain people in this space. I could read Adam Back's writings all day, but I can guarantee you, if I send Adam Back's writings to a group of 10 friends, maybe one might read half of it because they'll be like, okay, well, get to the point. What are you trying? You know what I mean? Or how does this affect me? So again, I think they're well respected. They're, OGs. And some people call me that. I don't see myself that way, not even close. But again, our voices will be needed overall, but those diverse voices will definitely be needed.
Well, I'm trying to build that out right now with bitcoinsherpa.com, and it's I'd love to have you be a part of it, man. If you could like come on board, maybe we can actually just make it like one of the Black Bitcoin billionaires like products or something like that. Because I want to put my money into like helping Bitcoin, and I'm not really looking at ways to make money off of it. I'm just looking at ways to help really increase the retention rate of Bitcoin. And if then a young Black man came on and started to go on Twitter to try to find somebody, and they find like Saifedean Ammous or Nick Szabo, who's one of the referenced in the white paper, and then Nick Szabo goes and says something about like some right wing thing that turns somebody off, they're going to be like, what the hell, Bitcoiners are a bunch of racists, and they're going to like leave.
And so I've gotten that. Some people are like, are the Bitcoiners a lot of the racist white dudes who want? I'm like, no, it's
just a misconception because
it's just a misconception because the media has to have something juicy, so they're going to make it that way.
Well, and also like populism is happening all over the world, right? And populism is being misrepresented as racism, and populism is more so just like you believe in roots. In your roots. You can be a Nigerian populist, you can be a Turkish populist, whatever it is. Just populism is just a movement that's kind of like putting a word to the way people are feeling, like they're feeling like things are wrong, and they want to protect traditions and stop seeing their jobs go away and all this stuff, and that gets misrepresented as left versus right and racism, and it kind of can come across like that. So I think it's like not good if the next billion people come in and all of our thought leaders are maybe these really like, maybe you think COVID is super scary and you want to wear a mask and protect yourself. And then the Bitcoiner with 200,000 followers is saying everybody who wears a mask is a sheep and COVID's not real. That's going to turn you off and you're going to think, oh, these Bitcoiners are nuts.
Exactly. Yeah. So they'll just try and find other voices. But yeah, I'm with you.
Or they'll go to Ethereum where the rainbows are and like people are
the unicorns and
like there's this misconception that Bitcoiners aren't inclusive, and it's there's a lot of like LGBTQ Bitcoiners. There's like Bitcoiners who are progressives. There's Bitcoiners who are like left-leaning Democrats. Like the Blue Matt is an example of that, and Andreas Antonopoulos. So there's a Bitcoin Sherpa for everybody, no matter what you believe and what your background is. There are a couple of really good Bitcoin Sherpas that you should follow, listen to their podcasts, read their book. And that's the biggest thing is like Bitcoin Sherpa aims to elevate those voices. And like, what it is they'll just like kind of fill out a little paragraph. This is kind of like who I am. If I was to listen to music, I'd listen to this. Or if I was to listen to a podcast, I'd listen to this. And then we can kind of get an idea of who you are and then partner you with somebody that follow that person. They're going to help you out on your journey.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I love that idea. And one thing about Bitcoiners, we are very self-regulatory. If you're in the Bitcoin space and you're trying to say that you know what you're talking about, we will check you really fast. And that's the best part about Bitcoin Sherpa is that all of these people that are put on there, as you're saying, in different groups, they all have been proven amongst other Bitcoiners that they know what they're talking about. Well, obviously they would have been called out a long time ago. They would be the Craig Wrights of the world. So these people know what they're talking about. So it doesn't matter what niche or what way you get into it. As long as you're getting the correct information, that's all I care about.
Well, I look forward to working with you guys on it. We'll connect offline after it. I'd love to get you guys all involved in it because it's definitely something that I think the space needs and will definitely help onboard people.
Absolutely.
So let's end it with obviously people should check out your book. Is it just bitcoinandblackamerica.com or how should they find it?
Yep, bitcoinandblackamerica.com. First and second edition. Second edition is on pre-order. You can also follow me on Twitter at BitcoinZay.
Bitcoin Zay, and then let's give a couple of other suggestions. Who are some other good folks in the Black community that if you're listening to this, you want to follow? Who would be some suggestions on Twitter for people, I guess, to take a look at following them?
So yes, Lamar at BIGMARH. Big Mar. He's the co-host or co-founder with Black Bitcoin Billionaires. Naja Roberts. She owns Crypto Blockchain Plug in California, Crypto Lounge. She's also over-the-counter trader, so you can actually buy Bitcoin from her. She has money service business. Bitcoin Vegan. Justin Riedrich. He's a good follow as well. Formerly out of prison. Had a felony, started his own business, got into Bitcoin, and he's doing big things there. Um, let's see, Tavania Evans is another one. So many. I'm trying not to make sure I don't forget somebody I know personally, but yeah, it's a lot to follow. I would just say follow people I have conversations with, and then come into the Black Bitcoin Billionaires. A lot of people are on there as well.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate coming on, and thanks a lot for all your contributions, and look forward to chatting with you again, and hopefully working on that tool for Bitcoiners with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, Brad.
All right. Bye-bye.